Ever take a self-reflection of yourself after a bad time and realize all the wrong you've done and you want to take it all back? You're powerless knowing all the damage you caused, and you just can't take the guilt and worry that you've made people you care about lose faith in you. You just want to tell them, that ain't me. That ain't me. Oops, looks like I'm getting ahead of myself. So, Pixar. Y'all know my past love-hate relationship with them. Everywhere I go, I hear people all the time say, "Ooh, Pixar's the best! Pixar makes the best animated movies! Pixar's so original!" Well, I'm here to say right now, I hate Pixar! Yeah, that's right, I hate Pixar! Mostly hate. But recently, I turned a new leaf and started to appreciate their movies a lot more. I have some dirty laundry to clean up. It's a long story and I won't bore you with it right now. We'll get to that later. Meanwhile, I think it's time for me to start over and look at Pixar movies with fresh eyes, and hopefully stop all those anthrax envelopes from being sent in my mailbox. Not only Pixar's first feature film, but the very first movie animated entirely with computers, Toy Story. If you don't know what this movie is, where the heck have you been? People have praised this movie to high heaven, so what new do I have to add? How about that I find it a little overrated? When you get down to it, this story is pretty basic. Woody is the old favorite toy who gets jealous when his owner, Andy, starts to love his new toy, Buzz Lightyear, who for some reason doesn't believe he's a toy. They end up in the house next door that belongs to a kid who blows up toys, and they gotta find their way back to Andy's house, while making amends along the way. Sure, it's cute seeing toys come to life, but at the same time, their only reason for existing is to be played with. They really don't have their own goals or motivations or anything. They're just there to serve their master. What does that sound like?
Oh no!
Maybe I'm reading too deep into a movie about talking toys. How about some positives? I do like Tom Hanks and Tim Allen's performances. They work off each other like an old comedy duo, and Woody makes a great straight man reacting to Bugs' naivete. There are plenty of moments that crack me up in this movie, with Woody's breakdown at the gas station being my favorite. And, being a Randy Newman fan, I love the music. Yes, Randy Newman is a great musician. Don't let what Douglas Walker says prevent you from listening to his music. His lyrics are very clever and satirical, and his voice complements his jazzy musical style. I recommend Sail Away and Land of Dreams. Listen to them. Thank me later. Back to Toy Story. Other than those positives above, the movie really doesn't have much to offer outside the landmark of it being the first computer animated movie. And people really got wrapped up in that hype. And it hurts me to say this because I grew up loving this movie, but since I grew older, it's only gotten worse and worse. And one I don't find myself watching a whole lot. Oh well, at least it's barely 80 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. I give Toy Story a strike rating. Great performances by Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, and Newman's catchy score aren't enough to get me over the bland story and one-dimensional characters. So yeah, I honestly don't get all the hype over the first Toy Story. It really hasn't aged very well. And is it just me, or does it sound like a nuclear missile is heading right for my house? A Bug's Life is quite possibly my favorite Pixar movie. I grew up with the first 5 Pixar movies and watched them all religiously as a kid, but Bug's Life was the one I found myself popping in the VCR the most. It has a lot of slapstick and wacky characters that I love from Looney Tunes cartoons, to all the charm and heart that Disney movies have. Honestly, this movie has one of the best casts of colorful and unique characters of any animated movie I've seen. The movie takes some time to focus on a bit of each character individually, so we both get to learn more about them, while also preventing the movie from feeling tedious or dragging on for too long. I guess I'm just a sucker for movies with big casts of characters that are constantly changing points of view. There's also something fascinating about seeing how all these bugs live their lives, how they gotta use things like sticks and leaves as tools, not to mention how unique the Bug City and the Bug Circus is. They turn the trash that people leave on the ground and use it to make buildings and houses. There's just something so creative about that. This movie is also one of Pixar's most colorful. Each character has their own unique color scheme, and it helps each and every one of them stand out, as well as add to their personalities. And the music is some of Randy Newman's best of his whole career. To this day, a 25-year-old man, I still find myself humming the tunes from this movie. They just have that kind of power over you. Listen. You're welcome for that. I don't know why it isn't held in such high regard as every other Pixar movie, nor do I understand why this is the one that connects with me the most. I guess it's one of those weird personal movies of mine, and the lack of attention it gets feels like it's all the more special to me. I feel like I see something about it that not everybody else sees, and that makes me smile. Sure, it could be considered a kiddie version of Seven Samurai, but it creates its own story and exists in its own world that you forget it took influence from Akira Kurosawa's classic. I could go on and on about this movie, but you've all seen it before. You probably just forgot about how good it was. If this is a Pixar movie you haven't watched in a while, try popping it in sometime. Maybe you'll have a completely new view of it and love it just as much as I do. I give it a grand slam rating. A cute and fun adventure movie from Pixar with lots of lovable characters, memorable music, and hilarious moments. An underrated animated classic. With Pixar's early successes, it didn't take them long to reach into the sequel bin and churn out another movie starring the bland characters from the first one I just love so much. Toy Story 2. Who asked for this? I didn't ask for this. Well, as it turns out, Disney originally commissioned another animation studio to make a low-budget 60-minute direct-to-DVD sequel in order to make a quick buck off of it. But the crew at Pixar fought Disney to allow them to make a theatrical sequel to put actual effort into. That's pretty cool, actually. Pixar could have easily let Disney have their way, but they weren't going to let a potential good movie slip from their fingers. That's something to be admired. And it pays off because I like this one much better than the first one. The story ain't restricted to a few locations, as the adventure takes the toys almost all over the whole town. From the bushes, to the street, to the toy store, to the apartment complex, and finally to an airport. An airport? Who would expect an airport in a Toy Story movie? It's much more interesting seeing these settings from a toy's point of view, as they are much smaller in scale, making the movie feel massive by comparison. The cast from the first is back, and picking up where they left off, and character development! Woody is no longer the selfish prick, and he goes out of his way to save another toy from being sold at a yard sale. Bugs has become the heroic type he thought he was in the first, while still acknowledging he's just a toy. Woody starts to realize there's a whole world outside of Andy's house, and even considers leaving him to see it. And the side characters actually have opportunities to do more of the story, while allowing their personalities to shine through. Slinky is the happy-go-lucky, reliable dog, Mr. Potato Head is the cynical realist, Ham is the John Ratzenberger role, and Rex is the golly-gee innocent man-child. So yeah, a much better movie in terms of the first one, much more deserving of the 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Man, you sure love handing those out when it comes to Pixar movies, don't you, RT? A masterpiece, right? Nothing wrong with it. Yeah, monkeys might fly out of my ass. I don't want to piss in everybody's punch bowl, but I do have some problems with this film. The scene where Woody realizes he wants to go to Japan, only for him to change his mind a minute later, always bothered me. I know, it's supposed to be a touching moment, but it always made me feel like Woody has bipolar disorder. The film also starred the twist villain cliche when Stinky Pete is a bad guy. Might have been shocking at the time, but this has been done way too much in animated movies recently. Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia. Knock off the Scooby-Doo bullshit! You're not clever, you're not original, you're cliched and tired, and we're starting to catch on to it. Stop it! Just stop it. So yeah, might be kind of harsh for me to rag on something that wasn't a cliche at the time, but keep in mind that Stinky Pete starts out as a sweet and caring guy, and it isn't until one scene when he shows his true colors. It would have been better if he slowly started to show signs he had bad intentions, but no, just out of nowhere. Hey guys, I'm a villain now. Other than that, I can't think of anything else I didn't like about this movie. It's head and shoulders above the original, and considering the production hell the movie went through, with 90% of it being lost only for the missing elements that turn up on an employee's computer, not to mention the crew only having 9 months to complete the film with several animators developing carpal tunnel syndrome as a result, it's like fate did everything it could to prevent this movie from being made. Toy Story 2 was a home run. An epic adventure movie about toys that takes twists and turns along the way and never feels boring, even if a few inconsistent character moments causes the pace to hiccup a bit. After a sequel, Pixar went back to its original ideas with a world where monsters scare kids as a 9-to-5 job, and one of my personal favorite Pixar films. Monsters Inc. is about two monsters, Mike and Sully, who have to take care of a human kid who sneaks into the monster world where monsters are scared to death of him. As a lover of monster movies, it's unique to see how monsters live on the other side of the closet. It's true, this idea has been done before in media like Little Monsters and Ah Real Monsters, but this one is just as engaging on its own. I like the dynamic pairing of Billy Crystal as Mike and John Goodman as Sully. Mike is the overreactive, panicky one, while Sully is the down-to-earth, laid-back one. Mike is hilarious, and his over-the-top reactions always crack me up. Yeah, let's talk about that. This movie feels like Pixar's take on a Looney Tunes cartoon, as there's lots of slapstick, and a lot of gags that go by in a couple of seconds that you might miss your first time viewing. They even pay tribute to the Chuck Jones cartoon Feed the Kitty in one scene. Not to mention, the idea of all these big scary monsters being afraid of a little innocent human kid is clever and hilarious in so many ways. The monsters all have unique designs and color palettes that prevent them from blending in with each other, and each design complements the character's personality. True, there is the surprise villain in this movie that I complained about previously, but for some reason, it didn't bother me too much. The movie's lighthearted nature also contrasts with its more dramatic moments, helping to make the sad stuff all the more heart-wrenching. And once again, the music by Randy Newman is catchy as all heck, as it includes one of his best songs, If I Didn't Have You. What more needs to be said? Monsters Inc. is a grand slam. A cute, clever, and hilarious movie about friendship, monsters, and everything in between. Next up is a movie I obsessed over when I was little. I played the video games, I had the poster hanging up in my room for the longest time. It drove me nuts. And I don't know why. I guess it was because I was fascinated with the ocean growing up. And not since The Little Mermaid was there a movie that captured the beauty of undersea life like Finding Nemo. Well, sad to say, folks, the movie holds up just fine into adulthood for me. Pixar was really starting to find their niche as the separate entity from Disney at this point. They were always willing to throw curveballs at you in order to keep you on your toes as a viewer. And for a movie made for kids, that's quite an accomplishment. There's a part where they run into sharks. Are they going to eat the main characters? There's a part when they run into sharks. Are they going to eat the main characters? No, they start a friendship club with them. Oh, they run into a pelican who's really nice and will help Marlin find Nemo. Is he going to end up being a villain with his own intentions? No, he actually wants to help out. Oh, Marlin and Dory go through a lot together. Are they going to end up as a couple in the end? No, they just remain friends. This movie offered so much unique in the table, and not just visuals, but storytelling as well. I love Albert Brooks and Ellen DeGeneres together. The way Marlin reacts and what Dory puts him through in that Albert Brooks way always gets a laugh out of me. And I absolutely adore Ellen as Dory. You'd think a character like this would get annoying quickly, yet they somehow make her both cute and innocent, as well as charming and humorous. Most of the fun of this movie is seeing what Marlin and Dory are going to run into next, and considering how massive the ocean is, there's plenty of surprises around the corner. Also, the subplot concerning Nemo mingling with the fishes that he meets in the aquarium is lots of fun, and all the side characters get at least one good laugh. If I have any complaints, it's that this movie can be a little overdramatic at times. I know, it's a movie about a father losing his son, but for a kid's movie, a lot of the scenes just get pretty melancholy. It got me groaning a bit when it gets really depressing. Also, I feel the whole opening act could have been paced a little better. We go from an introduction to Marlin and his wife, to his wife getting killed, to Marlin taking Nemo to his first day of school, to Nemo saying he hates his own father, to Nemo getting captured. I think that was a lot to throw in the first 10 minutes or so. I don't know, that just always bothered me. However, after the movie gets going, it rarely gets boring, and it has me forgetting what problems I had with the beginning soon after. With all that said, Finding Nemo is a home run. A colorful and fun adventure movie under the sea with all kinds of surprising twists and turns, despite a manic opening and a few overdramatic moments. Next was a movie I didn't really understand until a couple of years ago, and whose long-awaited sequel is the reason for me making this long-ass video. I guess because it wasn't about animals or objects, it really didn't captivate me as one I wanted to see. So I gave it a chance years after the hype died down, and I wasn't very impressed. I thought it was just a standard feel-good animated movie with superheroes that really didn't do anything new or exciting. Much to my shock, people around my age group were still talking about how great it was. I think it's fair to say that the reception this movie got is what started my resentment of Pixar. I felt it was overrated, not that impressive, and there was much better animated movies out there that nobody was paying attention to. Well, it wasn't until my college years when my peers begged me to give the movie a second chance with a fresh adult mind, and thankfully, I was 100% wrong about this movie. There's a reason I didn't get this when I was younger. This was the first Pixar movie made for adults. What kid can relate to a man going through a midlife crisis or his wife suspecting he's cheating on her? Unless that kid has a big growth spurt, I highly doubt they can. The casting is also one of my favorites in any Pixar movie. Craig T. Nelson's comedic timing is amazing. I love how he can switch from being quiet and unsuspecting to booming and angry. A stick he made famous in his sitcom, Coach. Samuel L. Jackson is great as always as the superhero best friend to Mr. Incredible, Frozone, but the character who steals the show is Jason Lee as Syndrome. You know him from movies like Mallrats and Chasing Amy, but this movie showed you he can really play a sinister villain. Some people might be put off by his southern accent, but I think that's what makes him more believable as a bad guy. He doesn't try to sound evil or all-powerful. He's just a guy with an agenda, and you never suspect him. Oh, Jason, I love you. Also, I think this is the first CG movie that showed that computer animation can match the same level of energy and exaggeration as hand-drawn films. Let's face it, Pixar movies before this, there really wasn't a lot of distinct movement from characters from what you would see in live-action movies. However, with this, director Brad Bird wanted the animators to apply the 12 principles of animation passed down from Disney's Nine Old Men and apply it to a computer animation. The result is appealing character designs, fluid movement, and of course, mind-blowing action scenes. The action in this movie is spectacular and really showed how exciting animation can be for the action genre. The characters are well written, relatable, and memorable. Not much to add, they just serve their purpose in the story and none of them are annoying or unneeded. The movie also has a great 1950s aesthetic to it, which I'm a huge sucker for. What else would you expect from the director of The Iron Giant? The music by Michael Giacchino is also worth noting. That upbeat, jazzy score always gets my toes tapping. So much about this movie to love, so little time. I'm glad I gave it a second chance, as it's become one of my favorite Pixar movies. I can't rate it any lower than a grand slam. A great, great, great superhero film that happens to be animated. Or maybe an animated movie that happens to be a superhero film. Whatever the case, a great story about family and returning to your glory days with memorable characters, great humor, and eye-popping action scenes that every animation fan needs to see. Cars is considered by even most hardcore Pixar fans to be the company's first dud. It showed that Pixar wasn't perfect, and even they could dive into commercial territory. This felt like the first movie they made for the sheer purpose of selling toys and making as much money as they could off of it. In other words, making it strictly for little kids while still trying to keep the adults in the audience entertained by using the cheapest ways possible to appeal to grown-ups. Oh look! Jay Leno's a car! Gone was most of the artistic integrity of the first batch of films, and here was the thinly written story with generic characters there to hit all the typical beats of the fish out of water storyline, and the overall message of, oh, winning ain't everything, it's all about being a good person, insert after school PSA here. So yes, I can see why a lot of people would think that this is a stinker compared to Pixar's usual standards. But honestly, I don't really think it's that bad. Granted, it's no masterpiece, but what Pixar movie is? Even the best ones can have plenty of problems. It's the fish out of water story we've seen a dozen times, but once again, the characters really make this movie lovable. While they aren't as energetic as Bug's Life, there is a lot here to love. I love the jalopy who's a kooky old lady, I love the lowrider voiced by Cheech Marin, and casting George Carlin as a hippie Volkswagen is too clever for this kind of movie. One thing I can't stand is Larry the Cable Guy as Mater. Pretty much every redneck stereotype rolled into one. This guy happened, and we let it happen, folks. And it's movies like these that are a grim reminder of that. I also thought the animators did a good job of making the cars look alive, despite the fact they had little movement to work with. Why do I have such a soft spot for this movie? Well, I guess it's because my dad's a huge racing fan, and growing up, he really introduced me to the culture and sportsmanship of it. So an animated movie about racing cars kind of has its charms for me. So, overall, I give Cars a base hit rating. Definitely a movie made for little kids, but there's no reason why adults can't find something to love in it. A cute little movie that shows the beauties of small town values in a world of celebrity overhype. So, Pixar got a little rocky with that last one, but hey, Brad Bird came back to save the day. This should be a good one, right? Right? It won the Oscar that year. That means it'll be Ratatouille. Oh my god. Never have I been so bored by an animated movie. I mean, I've seen some bad films in my life, but they were at least badly entertaining. There's no worse crime to cinema than a movie that's not just bad, it's boring. This movie is a prime example of that. I don't even remember the story. A rat becomes a chef. That's pretty much it. A rat becomes a chef. Okay, there's a romance. There's a conspiracy plot. There's a plot with a food critic. There's a plot with the rat returning to his family. And where did all these plots come from? This is supposed to be a chef rat movie. Which gets even more ridiculous when the rat controls a janitor to start making food by pulling his hair. Like, what the hell? That ain't how the nervous system works. When you pull your hair, it really hurts. That would have been hilarious if every time he pulled the chef's hair, he was trying to hold in pain. I'd pay to see that. All these plots just pad out the movie and make it overly linger, and the movie itself is 111 minutes in length, including credits. That's asinine for an animated movie. It's so dagnam boring. I literally did not care about anything going on. There was a sheer lack of energy in this movie. And it's Brad Bird, for Pete's sake. Brad Bird! Incredibles had lots of manic energy and great characters. And you can't call yourself an animation fan if you haven't seen The Iron Giant. This? It was just boring. I didn't care about the mouse, I didn't care about the janitor, I didn't care about anything. Okay, I kinda liked the ending and the message of criticism versus passion for your work. But still, boring! The character designs and animation are good. Again, it's Brad Bird, that's to be expected. But, it's... oh, you know what I'm gonna say. I just can't believe it got all this praise, all this attention. It won the Oscar that year. 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. Are you yanking my leg right now? Persepolis lost to this movie? Persepolis? A movie about a young rebellious girl growing up during the Iranian Revolution lost to this boring rat chef tripe? At the risk of derailing into my old cringy ranting self, maybe this movie connected with people, maybe there was something people liked, maybe it was appealing. Well, I sure as hell don't see it. This was a movie I was constantly checking the runtime while watching, but to my dismay, it just kept on going. I don't even know how to categorize it. I don't even have a rating for it. I feel if I give a Brad Bird film anything less than a grand slam, I'd have to throw myself in the loony bin. So, I resigned from rating this movie. It was just a boring, overdrawn, bland, cliche story of an animated movie that I never want to subject myself to again. Next! Ah, that's more like it. A robot love story might sound like a cheesy and lame idea for a movie, but leave it to the folks at Pixar for making it work. The film has very little dialogue, and the robots are able to communicate and make for great storytelling without it. That takes talent. The movie also looks flat out beautiful with some very innovative reflective textures, as well as a unique space colony. A lot of people complain about how preachy that the last half gets, and I was one of them, but it's grown on me. It also has a surprise villain when the autopilot turns out being a HAL 3000-like droid, but it's really easy to ignore because everything else about this movie is so great. The scene where Wally and Eve are dancing in space reminds me of Disney's magical moments of the past, like Aladdin and Jasmine riding on the magic carpet for the first time. The only weird thing I didn't like about this movie was how it splices in live-action footage. Just seems kind of off-putting when you see Fred Willard come out of nowhere. Why wasn't he animated like everybody else? Is there a reason for that? It really doesn't add anything to the aesthetic of the movie, but I'm just nitpicking at this point. It's hard to talk much about this movie because it's one of those that you just have to see. It's definitely a Pixar movie that lets a lot of the visuals tell the story, and that's something I admire. WALL-E is a grand slam. A cute and heartwarming robot love story full of breathtaking animation. A feature-length movie with all the creativity and magic of a Pixar short. Up, in my opinion, is the first Pixar movie that I felt could only come from Pixar. A lot of the fun of this movie is not knowing what comes next, and the sheer absurdity yet sheer brilliance of each moment. There's talking dogs, a rare bird, and having to carry a house that's tied to 1,000 balloons. It's great. It's so unique and creative that I ain't got much to say about it. The first 10 minutes that everybody talks about, yeah, they're pretty amazing. Some of Pixar's best. It shows that there's a lot of power in storytelling without dialogue, and audience members are smart enough to fill in the blanks themselves. Not to mention pretty adult for a Pixar movie. Guess I'm biting my tongue now when I said Pixar never wants to take risks and just sticks to the same kiddie stuff. Honestly, if I have one problem with this movie, it's that it beat both Fantastic Mr. Fox and The Secret Kills for the Oscar. Then again, it was also the first animated movie since Beauty and the Beast to be nominated for Best Picture. After that happened, gee, I wondered what animated movie's gonna win the Oscar that year. But that ain't the movie's fault, so it gets a pass. There's also, once again, a twist villain in the movie that you see coming a mile away, but the movie itself is so much fun and so creative that I can't let something like that bother me. Just please, Pixar and Disney, would you stop using that cliche? Stop it. Up is a grand slam. A fun, offbeat adventure comedy about an old man, a little boy, a talking dog, and a colorful bird that adults are sure to love as much, if not more, than kids. Toy Story 3 is the tear-jerking epic finale to the I don't like it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't very much care for it. I thought after Toy Story 2 there really was nothing more to do with the series. It pretty much hit all the same story beats and themes of the second one. I know, it was an emotional ending to the characters everybody grew up with. Or was it? I'm just over this franchise. I don't care anymore. Just let it die! Next movie. Not gonna lie, I didn't bother watching this one. Everybody hates it. Why should I even care? Even though I love the first Cars movie, Larry the Cable Guy is the main character in this one. That doesn't sound like something I like. I'm just shocked that this movie is as hated as it is. 39% on Rotten Tomatoes? Only 2 Walt Disney Animation Studio films are rated lower than that. Why didn't I watch this movie? Because I watch movies to enjoy myself, not for the sake of reviewing. My time is precious, folks. I'm not going to waste it on movies I know I'm not going to like just so I can say, oh, I've seen every Pixar movie. There's a slim chance that the people who might be exaggerating and there's something in this movie I might like, well, I ain't risking it. So yeah, Cars 2. Next. People were harsh on this one. It was Pixar's take on Celtic mythology, and everybody thought it was pretty underwhelming as the Lexo boys just copied the same rebellious princess plot from every Disney movie. And I like it. Compared to the best Pixar movies, it sure as heck doesn't stand up, but for a fun fantasy adventure movie, I think it's a great time. I was waiting for Pixar to do a fairy tale-like story, and the Scottish setting gives it a unique break from the usual tales we're used to seeing. As a lover of Celtic art and mythology, I think this movie does a great job of capturing that style and feel. I'm sure me having Celtic heritage hasn't contributed to that either. The animation is great, and the story is unique, and the music is fantastic. Seriously, listen to this song.
I will ride, I will fly, chase the wind and touch the sky. I will fly, chase the wind and touch the sky.
Ooh, bless me bagpipes, I love Celtic music. Also, give this movie credit. They actually got actors from the country this movie takes place in to voice the characters. Where were you on that one, every Disney movie ever made? If it's one complaint I have, it's that, yes, this movie is pretty basic and boring at times. Not Ratatouille levels of boring, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some points I was growing impatient. Also, the little kids in this film are annoying. Come on, Pixar, you ain't Illumination. You're better than that. So yeah, I don't think Brave is that bad of a film. I don't think it should have won the Oscar that year, but hey, that's a given when it comes to me. So I give Brave a... Honestly, I would have given it a base hit rating, but thanks to that badass Touch the Sky song, it gets a home run. A colorful and magic movie with great Celtic influence. Even if it's kind of boring at times, it's still a movie worth checking out. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I skipped this one too. I love Monsters Inc. so much that I don't feel the need to see this. Prequel. I don't need to see Mike and Sully at college. Really, Pixar? A college movie? I expect better from you! Monsters Inc. is fine the way it is. Why do we need another story related to it? Was there a campaign in the streets that I was unaware of? There's probably some good stuff in it, but like Cars 2, I ain't risking it. I'd much rather watch movies that are original and creative. That's what I expect from Pixar. Taking ideas and making them their own. Something like this. The movie that made me start to say, maybe Pixar ain't so bad after all. I did a full review of this movie back in 2016, but here's my annotated thoughts on it. Once again, the idea of the inner workings of the human brain has been done before in media, but Pixar takes the idea and does something new with it, as any creative team of individuals would do. I love how all the emotions act like the feelings they represent, while having character on top of it. I love how colorful the movie looks and how bouncy the animation is. It's like a 3D Looney Tunes cartoon. It's wacky and lively. The moral of how it's okay to be sad is a pretty rare lesson for kids, as well as adults, giving this movie something new to add to the table. The cast is great, the animation is great, the story is great, the music is great. What more needs to be said? A grand slam. I didn't watch this one either. Next up was a movie I was a little harsh on when I first talked about it. Upon watching it again, I realized how much I love it, even more than the first. Before this movie came out, I saw the title of Finding Dory and I had the feeling, oh great, they're just gonna do the first movie over again. Well, I was surprised with just how many different directions they took with this movie and how much fun I had with it. The movie focuses on Dory, arguably the best character from the first one. Normally it's storytelling suicide to make a solo movie about the comedic relief, but here, it works because Dory's personality is hilarious no matter what situation she's put in. The movie takes place at an aquarium, or SeaWorld-like park, giving way to some very creative situations. While I love Finding Nemo, I admit some parts were overly dramatic and got a little boring. In this movie, I wasn't bored one bit. I had fun throughout the whole thing. That's mostly because Andrew Stanton wrote a screenplay that was constantly exciting and constantly had stuff going on. There's a scene where an octopus drives a truck into the ocean. How many movies can you see where an octopus drives a truck into the ocean? The movie also has a cute lesson about being proud of your disabilities and not letting them hold you back. Pretty ambitious moral for the age we live in. Well, I didn't care much for Marlin in Finding Nemo. He's a lot better character in this movie. I guess because he spends less time as a depressed father and more time reacting to the situations he gets himself in trying to save his friend. That's some great character development, I'd say. All the side characters introduced are memorable and get a great laugh, especially the heartbroken Clam. Considering the fact I had a bad breakup a month before this movie came out, that's something I needed to get a good cheer up. It's also interesting to note that this was one Pixar movie that wasn't nominated for an Academy Award the year it came out. With how praised it was and considering Pixar's track record, I find that quite surprising. Oh well, I don't mind. It's a chance for a studio that's not Disney or Pixar to get its time to— Are you fucking kidding me?! What do you have against amazing movies, Oscars? Finding Dory is a grand slam. A rare sequel that's better than the previous, filled with great characters, great humor, and a heartwarming lesson. Speaking of sequels that are better than the original, I'm sure everybody's reaction was the same when the trailer came out. Another one? Screw that. I'll wait for Coco to come out. Well, I guess I'm lucky I gave it a chance, because I feel a lot of people missed out on a great movie. It stays true to the nature of the first one while still being a new story. And as far as I can tell, no mention of Cars 2, so that's a neat bonus. Larry the Cable Guy isn't even in this that much, so that's another plus. There's also a lot of focus on a new character named Cruz Ramirez. She's pretty cool, and she has a pretty interesting backstory, and is probably the main reason to watch this movie. The film deals with the theme of getting old and trying to keep up with the times. It's a pretty heart-warming lesson that I'm sure will calm down anybody who has a fear of getting old, like myself. As always, the animation is fantastic, and even Randy Newman is back doing the music. There's also a great moment involving Cruz when she breaks down and tells Lightning her story and how her life didn't go as she planned. It's pretty powerful. All the more great because it's a Cars movie, so you don't see it coming. I can't really think of too much I didn't like about it, other than the fact that it's mediocre compared to Pixar's usual standards. But for what it is, it's a great time from start to finish that I think is worth a chance. It's a home run. A lot better than the first and a much more entertaining movie. Might be a little underwhelming, but for a Cars movie, you can do much worse. Much worse. Next, and most recently, a movie that I reviewed with a heavy heart. Remember that dirty laundry I told you about at the beginning of this video? Yeah, this is it. But wait a little bit longer, okay? Coco is a movie based around the Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead. Gee, haven't seen that before. Okay, I know we're all sick of seeing that comparison, myself included. Both are two completely different movies, and both deserve to stand on their own. So, I got suckered into the hype like everybody else. This is a great movie. As a lover of Mexican culture and artwork, I eat it all up. Once again, Pixar pays respect to the culture it represents by getting an entirely Latino cast, and they all do a great job. Even the kid. Who says kids can't be good actors? And it's Pixar's most colorful movie since Inside Out. In fact, I think it's even more colorful than Inside Out. I got a thing for color if you haven't noticed. The story is one of Pixar's most darkest and heartwarming, as it deals with what it's like to be dead, as well as how it's important to follow your dreams while not leaving your family behind. Deep lesson for a kids movie that's just as helpful for adults. Also keeping with the Mexican culture, the music is fantastic as it incorporates a lot of Latin music. While the film does have the twist villain cliche I'm sick of seeing, the rest of the movie is so creative and fun that it's easy to ignore, and I don't let it bother me. Not much more to say. Coco is just another grand slam from Pixar. A colorfully animated movie with a wonderful message and great respect for Mexican culture. But more important than this movie for me is the personal story I have related to it. See, I watch a lot of stuff with my best friend. Cartoons, movies, the like. Well, he wanted to watch this film with me one day. And because of my sheer hatred for Pixar at the time, I put him through hell. I was pointing out every Pixar cliche, every problem I had with the movie, and despite his efforts to change the subject, I just kept being difficult. I was driving him mad. We didn't even make it 20 minutes into the movie when he gave up on me and didn't want to talk. Afterwards, I kept messaging him on Discord, begging him to come back. We had a huge argument about my problems with Pixar, and he said something that was a good stab to my heart. I thought I could enjoy Pixar movies with you, but clearly, that ain't gonna happen. It was then I realized how I was acting. Here, my best buddy of 11 years was wanting to have a good time with me, and I was acting like the asshole friend at the party who was crapping on everybody's good time. I let my hatred of Pixar bleed into my good time with my best bud. That ain't me. I'm never one to let hatred and anger burn in me like that. He also said something that caused me to have an epiphany on not just my attitude, but my whole life. Maybe you wouldn't hate Pixar so much if you would just try to enjoy yourself. It's true. For the longest time I hated popular things for the sheer purpose of hating them. I was so determined on being unique and not feeling tempted to follow the herd. I wanted to be the cool lone wolf who didn't love what everybody else loved. I was that way ever since middle school, and it just snowballed into hatred and anger from there. Years of harassment and feelings of isolation can do that to a kid. And this attitude of mine spilled into my YouTube videos. As my best friend so wisely pointed out, I projected my anger onto things that never even deserved it. There's no excusing my past actions. My past rants, the way I acted in the comments section of my videos, and even to my own friends, the people I love with all my heart, was so uncharacteristic of me. Made me realize that there's no point in being hateful and angry for the sake of it. No good comes from it. It tears you up on the inside, and it can ruin your relationships with people who care for you. I couldn't live with how I made my best friend feel that night. It was something that caused me to feel sickness and regret that I'd never felt before. To everybody watching this, I'm sorry if any of my videos ever made you angry. I'm sorry if I ever gave you attitude that wasn't asked for. I'm sorry to any of my fans who got sick of my shit and began to hate me for it. I'm sorry for not giving a lot of things a fair chance and being too stubborn to realize people were trying to tell me that my attitude I was giving off was the problem. I only hope those of you who never really liked me are willing to give me a second chance, and I can work towards a better future. Turning a new leaf and being the reviewer, the person that I want people to remember me for. I love every single one of you. Pixar is a great studio that has given us a lot of amazing movies. It's true. They've definitely gone a cheap route by doing a lot of sequels and have had a few duds over the years. But for every bad Pixar movie, there's 3 or 4 great ones. There are some I don't like, but it's only my opinion, and I don't think anybody should love something any less just because I didn't see the appeal in them. I look forward to Incredibles 2 and whatever Pixar makes after that, because everybody deserves a second chance. What are your favorite Pixar movies? And what ideas do you folks have for animated movies? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay loony, my friends.
When the cold wind is a calling and the sky is clear and bright, misty